He was just the guy emptying the trash cans, or so they thought. But when Caleb Hawthorne, a struggling single dad scrubbing floors to buy his daughter's insulin, burst into the boardroom of Kensington Global, he didn't just spill a bucket of water. He spilled a secret that froze the entire room. Victoria Kensington was seconds away from signing a historic $4.2 billion merger. She had the pen in her hand. But what the janitor screamed next didn't just kill the deal, it resurrected a ghost from her past that changed everything. You won't believe who he really was. The fluorescent lights of the 42nd floor always hummed with a specific headache-inducing frequency at 2 a.m. For Caleb Hawthorne, that hum was the soundtrack of his life. He dipped the grey mop into the yellow bucket, the water swirling with the scent of industrial lemon and failure. At 34, Caleb had the hands of a labourer, but the eyes of a man who had read too many books and seen too much darkness. His uniform, a drab grey jumpsuit with the patch clean course stitched over his heart, fit him loosely. It hid the lean muscle he'd built from double shifts, just as his silence hid the sharp mind that used to dissect corporate law for breakfast. "Come on, Caleb. 2 more offices," he muttered to himself, wringing out the mop. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Mrs. Higgins, the neighbour, watching his 6-year-old daughter Lily. "Her fever is down, but she's asking for you. Don't be late, hon." Caleb closed his eyes, leaning his forehead against the cold handle of the mop. Lily. She was the only reason he swallowed his pride every night. The medical bills for her autoimmune condition, juvenile idiopathic arthritis, were astronomical. The treatments weren't fully covered by the catastrophic insurance Clean Core provided. He needed this job. He needed the overtime. He needed to be invisible. He pushed his cart toward the executive wing. This was the domain of Victoria Kensington, the newly appointed CEO of Kensington Global. He'd never met her, not really. He was part of the furniture to people like her, a blurred shape in the periphery that made trash disappear and coffee stains vanish. But he knew her. He knew her schedule by the indentations in her plush carpet. He knew her stress levels by the number of half-empty espresso cups left on her mahogany desk. And lately, he knew she was in trouble. Kensington Global, a titan in logistics and shipping, was bleeding money. The board was circling like sharks in expensive Italian suits. The rumour mill, which the janitorial staff heard long before the shareholders, was that Victoria was being forced into a merger with Mercer Holdings, a conglomerate run by Silas Mercer. Silas Mercer. Even the name made Caleb's grip on the mop tighten until his knuckles turned white. Caleb pushed the double doors of the conference room open. It was empty, but the air still smelled of stale cologne and high-stakes tension. Papers were scattered across the massive glass table. They had been negotiating late again. He began to sweep, moving methodically around the leather chairs. His eyes, trained by years of habit, he tried desperately to suppress, scanned the table. He shouldn't look. It wasn't his business anymore. He was a janitor. He was nobody. But then he saw it. A thick document, bound in blue, sat near the head of the table. A red sticky note was slapped on top. Final draft, for signature at 9:00 a.m. The wind from the HVAC vent fluttered the cover open. Caleb glanced down, intending to close it. Then he froze. Section 14. Paragraph B. The Asset Liquidation Clause. His eyes darted across the legal jargon. To the untrained eye, it looked like standard boilerplate text regarding redundant assets. But Caleb wasn't untrained. He had been a prodigy, a senior analyst at a top firm, before the incident that destroyed his reputation and left him with nothing but his daughter. He read the subclause. It was buried deep, referencing a shell company called Obsidian Logistics. "My God," Caleb whispered, his voice raspy in the empty room. This wasn't a merger. It was a gutting. Silas Mercer wasn't buying Kensington Global to save it. He was buying it to strip it for parts. Specifically, the patent portfolio for their automated shipping drones. Once the deal was signed, the clause allowed Mercer to transfer the intellectual property to Obsidian for pennies on the dollar, bankrupt the main entity, and leave the Kensington family and thousands of employees destitute. Victoria Kensington was about to sign her own death warrant, and she didn't know it. Caleb stepped back, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Walk away," a voice in his head screamed. "You are a janitor. You have a sick daughter. If you get involved, they will dig into your past. They will find out who you are." He reached for the mop. He turned his back on the table. He made it to the door. Then he thought of Lily. He thought of the thousands of employees, people like him with families, mortgages, and sick kids who would lose their jobs if Mercer liquidated the company. He cursed softly, turned off the lights, and walked out. But the image of Section 14 burned in his mind like a brand. The morning sun hit the glass facade of the Kensington Tower like a spear. Inside the boardroom, the mood was funeral somber, masked by aggressive cheerfulness. Victoria Kensington sat at the head of the table. At 28, she was young for a CEO, and the vultures in the room never let her forget it. She wore a white suit, sharp and pristine armor, against the condescension of the older men surrounding her. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, revealing a face that was beautiful but etched with exhaustion. To her right sat the board of directors, a row of nodding heads. To her left sat Silas Mercer. Silas was 50, handsome in a rugged, dangerous way, with a smile that didn't reach his cold, grey eyes. He played with a gold fountain pen, clicking the cap on and off. Click, click, click. "Victoria, darling," Silas said, his voice smooth as aged scotch. "We've been dancing around this for weeks. The offer is generous, beyond generous. It saves your father's legacy. It saves the stock price. It hands you majority control, Silas," Victoria said, her voice steady, though her hands were trembling beneath the table. "My father built this company on independence." "Your father is in a coma, Victoria," Silas said gently, a master of feigned empathy. "And the company is drowning. You have a liquidity crisis in Q3. Without my capital injection, payroll bounces in 2 weeks. Do you want to be the CEO who couldn't pay her workers?" The threat hung in the air. The board members shifted uncomfortably. "He's right, Victoria," chimed in Arthur Pemsley, the chairman of the board. He was a man with a red face and a loose necktie. "We have a fiduciary duty. The $4.2 billion valuation is a lifeline." Victoria looked at the document in front of her. The blue binder. The same one Caleb had seen hours ago. She felt trapped. She had reviewed the contract. Her lawyers' expensive suits from Bradford and Lane had reviewed the contract. They said it was clean. They said it was the only way out, but something in her gut twisted. It felt too easy. Silas Mercer was known as the Butcher on Wall Street. Why was he being so benevolent? I need a moment," Victoria said. "We don't have a moment," Silas said, checking his watch. "The markets open in 20 minutes. I need the press release out by 9:30, or the deal is off. I have a flight to Tokyo at noon. Sign it, Victoria. Be the hero." He slid the document closer to her. He uncapped the gold pen and offered it to her handle first. Victoria looked around the room. No allies, just expectant stares. She took the pen. The metal was warm from Silas's touch. "Fine," she whispered. She opened the binder to the signature page. The paper was heavy, cream-colored, expensive. Victoria A. Kensington, CEO. The line waited for her ink. She lowered the pen. The tip touched the paper. A tiny dot of black ink bloomed. Bam! The double doors of the boardroom slammed open with such force that the glass rattled in the frames. Every head in the room snapped toward the entrance. Standing there was not a lawyer, not a securities commission officer, not a police officer. It was the janitor. Caleb stood in the doorway, chest heaving. He hadn't changed out of his grey uniform. He held a crumpled printout in one hand, a copy of the contract he'd frantically made in the copy room downstairs, covered in red Sharpie circles. "Get out!" Arthur Pemsley roared, standing up. "Security." "How did he get in here? Don't sign it!" Caleb shouted, his voice cracking, but booming with authority that didn't match his jumpsuit. He pointed a calloused finger directly at Victoria. "Don't you put your name on that paper, Ms. Kensington." Silas Mercer didn't stand up. He just narrowed his eyes, looking at Caleb like one looks at a cockroach on a dinner plate. "Security is on their way. Ignore the help, Victoria. Sign." "I said don't." Caleb stepped into the room. He didn't look like a janitor anymore. He walked with the stride of a man who owned the floor. He ignored the board members, gasping at his audacity. He walked straight up to Silas Mercer. "You missed a spot," Caleb said, slamming the crumpled papers down on the glossy table right over Victoria's hands. Victoria recoiled, looking up at the man. She recognized him vaguely. The guy who cleaned the glass walls on Tuesdays. He usually kept his head down. Now his eyes, strikingly blue and burning with intensity, were locked onto hers. "Who are you?" Victoria asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Someone who actually read Section 14. Caleb said, breathless. He turned the page he had slapped down. It was covered in red ink. He had diagrammed the legal structure of the shell company. "It's a trapdoor clause," Caleb said, the legal terminology flowing off his tongue with practiced ease. "Paragraph B connects to the subsidiary rights in the appendix. If you sign this the moment the ink is dry, Obsidian Logistics absorbs your IP rights. Mercer doesn't want the company. He wants the tech. By Monday morning, Kensington Global will be a shell bankrupt and stripped, and he will own your father's drones for free." The room went deathly silent. Silas Mercer's face went from bored to stone cold. He stood up slowly. "This is absurd. Who is this clown? He washes toilets. Are you going to take legal advice from a man who smells like bleach?" "He's right," a quiet voice said from the back of the room. It was the junior legal associate, a young man named Greg, who had turned pale. He was looking at where Caleb had circled the text. I didn't see the cross-reference to the appendix, but if you read it with the IP transfer definitions, he's right. It bypasses the shareholder approval for asset stripping." Victoria looked from the janitor to Silas. Silas's mask slipped. For a split second, she saw pure, unadulterated rage. "Get him out of here," Silas barked, losing his cool. 2 security guards burst into the room. "Wait," Victoria commanded. She stood up, matching Caleb's height. She looked at the diagrams Caleb had drawn. They were brilliant, precise, the work of a master strategist. She looked at Caleb. "Why?" she asked. "Why save me?" Caleb looked at her. and for a moment the intensity faded, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. Because my daughter needs this company to exist so I can buy her medicine next week. And because, he paused, because I know what it's like to lose everything to a man like him. He gestured to Silas. Silas stared at Caleb, his eyes narrowing as if trying to place a face from a long-forgotten memory. Then Silas's eyes widened. The color drained from his face. "You," Silas whispered. "I thought you were dead." Caleb smiled, a cold, sharp smile. "No, Silas. Just interrupted." The security guards didn't handle Caleb gently. They grabbed him by the arms of his grey jumpsuit, hauling him out of the boardroom like a sack of refuse. "Get your hands off me," Caleb growled, shaking one guard off with surprising strength. "I'm leaving." "You're damn right you're leaving," the head of security spat. "You're fired, Hawthorne. Don't even think about cleaning out your locker. We'll mail you your trash." Inside the boardroom, the silence was deafening. Silas Mercer had stormed out moments after Caleb, his face a mask of thunder, muttering about incompetence and breach of contract. He had taken his team of sharks with him, leaving Victoria alone with her stunned board of directors. "Victoria," Arthur Pemsley stammered, loosening his tie, his face blotchy. "That was irregular. We must call Mercer back. Apologize. We can still salvage the deal." Victoria stood at the window, looking down at the city streets far below. She was trembling not from fear, but from the adrenaline of a near miss. She turned slowly, her eyes cold. "Salvage it?" she asked, her voice cutting through the room. "Arthur, did you look at the papers the janitor left? Did you—" She slammed her hand down on Caleb's crumpled, coffee-stained printout. "He was right," she said. "Greg confirmed it. Silas wasn't buying us. He was liquidating us. If I had signed that this company would be dead by Tuesday, and you—" She pointed at the expensive lawyers from Bradford and Lane. "You charged me $3,000 an hour to miss what a man scrubbing floors found on his lunch break. Get out, all of you." As the room cleared, leaving Victoria alone in the vast, silent office, she couldn't stop thinking about Caleb's eyes, and Silas's reaction. "I thought you were dead." She grabbed her phone and dialed HR. "This is Victoria Kensington. I need the personnel file for Caleb Hawthorne. Custodial staff, immediately." 5 minutes later, she was staring at a digital file that was frustratingly thin. Name, Caleb Hawthorne. DOB, December 4th, 1989. Previous employment day, laborer, warehouse, packer. Education, GED. It was a lie. A man with a GED didn't know what a trapdoor clause was. A warehouse packer didn't make Silas Mercer, the most feared raider on Wall Street, look like he'd seen a ghost. Victoria didn't wait for the elevator. She took the stairs, her heels clicking rapidly as she descended past the marble lobby, past the polished offices, down, 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 into the bowels of the building. The basement smelled of wet concrete and cleaning chemicals. It was a labyrinth of pipes and roaring boilers. She found the custodial break room at the end of a long, dim corridor. The door was open. Caleb was there. He wasn't leaving. He was sitting on a rusted metal folding chair, his head in his hands. A small, battered duffel bag sat at his feet. "You're not supposed to be down here, Miss Kensington," Caleb said without looking up. "I'm just waiting for my ride. My daughter's school called. I have to pick her up." Victoria stepped into the small, depressing room. It was plastered with safety posters and smelled of old coffee. "Who are you?" she asked. Caleb looked up. The adrenaline had faded, leaving him looking exhausted, older than his 34 years. "I'm nobody. I'm the guy who cleans your trash cans." "Stop it," Victoria said, stepping closer. "Silas knows you. You read that contract in seconds. You understood complex derivative liability. Who are you, really?" Caleb stood up, hoisting his bag. "It doesn't matter. I saved your company. You're welcome. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go explain to my 6-year-old why we might not be able to afford her insulin next month because I just got fired." He tried to brush past her, but Victoria grabbed his arm. His bicep was hard as rock beneath the rough fabric. "I didn't fire you," she said. Caleb stopped. He looked at her hand on his arm, then up to her face. "HR fired me," he said. "I am the CEO," Victoria said firmly. "I outrank HR. You're not fired. In fact, I'm promoting you." Caleb laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "To what head of sanitation? I don't want your charity, Miss Kensington." "I need to know why Silas Mercer is afraid of you," she insisted. "He called you a ghost. Why?" Caleb sighed. He dropped the bag. He walked over to a small, cracked mirror hanging above a utility sink and splashed cold water on his face. When he turned back, his posture had changed. The slump of the janitor was gone. He stood tall, his shoulders squared, an air of command radiating from him that seemed to shrink the room. "5 years ago," Caleb said quietly. "My name wasn't Caleb Hawthorne. It was Caleb Sterling." Victoria gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Caleb Sterling. The Phantom of Wall Street, the youngest partner in the history of Sterling and Crow. It was a legend she had studied in business school. Caleb Sterling was a legal prodigy, a corporate shark who specialized in defending companies against hostile takeovers. He was brilliant, ruthless, and unbeatable. And then overnight, he had vanished. Rumors said he had embezzled millions. Rumors said he had gone to prison. Rumors said he had killed himself. "I didn't embezzle a dime," Caleb said, reading the look on her face. "Silas Mercer destroyed me." He leaned against the sink, crossing his arms. "I was defending a tech firm against Mercer's first major raid. I found a flaw in his financing. I was going to bury him. 2 days before the court date, evidence appeared in my accounts. Cayman Island transfers, client theft. It was planted masterful forgeries. But that wasn't enough for Silas." Caleb's voice dropped to a whisper, trembling with suppressed rage. "He leaked the scandal to the press. My assets were frozen, my reputation incinerated. But the stress. My wife Sarah was 8 months pregnant with Lily. The paparazzi were camped on our lawn. The FBI raided our house at 4 a.m. He looked away, blinking rapidly. Sarah went into early labor from the stress. There were complications, preeclampsia. The doctors. They saved Lily. But Sarah, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. The silence in the basement was heavy with the weight of his grief. "I lost my wife, my career, my home, and my name," Caleb said softly. "I took a plea deal to avoid prison so I could raise my daughter. I changed my name. I moved to the other side of the city. I took cash jobs. I disappeared. Because if I fought him, he threatened to come after Lily." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. She had grown up in luxury, her problems always cushioned by money. She couldn't imagine the hell this man had walked through. "He's back, Caleb," Victoria said. "He tried to kill my company today, and he saw you. He knows you're alive. Do you think he's going to let you go just because you're sweeping floors? Caleb's jaw tightened. No, Silas doesn't leave loose ends. Then fight him, Victoria said. Help me. I have the money. I have the company. You have the brain. You know how he thinks. I can't practice law, Caleb said. I'm disbarred. I don't need a lawyer, Victoria said, her eyes blazing. I have lawyers. I need a general. I need a strategist. I need the Phantom. Caleb looked at her. He saw the same fire in her that he used to have. He thought of Lily, fragile and sweet, depending on him. He thought of Sarah's grave, which he couldn't even afford to put fresh flowers on last week. If I do this, Caleb said, I do it my way. No board approval, no paper trail. I'm just the janitor. But inside this room, I call the shots. Victoria extended her hand. Deal. Caleb looked at her manicured hand, then at his own rough, calloused palm. He shook it. Deal. But first we have a problem. What? Silas knows he failed to trick you, so now he's going to stop being nice. The friendly merger is over. By Monday morning, he starts the hostile takeover. You have 48 hours to find $500 million in liquid capital, or he buys your debt and forecloses on the tower. Victoria paled. That's impossible. Caleb picked up his mop bucket, a small, dangerous smile playing on his lips. It's not impossible, Victoria. It's just expensive. Grab a bucket. We have work to do. The weekend was a blur of caffeine and chaos. Victoria's penthouse apartment became the war room. It was safer than the office. Caleb suspected Silas had the Kensington boardroom bugged. Caleb arrived on Saturday morning, not in a suit, but in clean jeans and a flannel shirt, holding the hand of a small girl with bright blue eyes and leg braces. This is Lily, Caleb said. Lily hid behind her father's leg, shy but curious. Are you the Queen? She asked Victoria, looking at the chandelier in the foyer. Victoria smiled, crouching down. No, sweetie. I'm just Victoria. Would you like some hot chocolate? I have a chef who makes the best marshmallows. As Lily settled into the massive living room with a cartoon and a mug of cocoa, Caleb and Victoria went to the study. Caleb transformed. He paced the room dictating notes, drawing complex diagrams on a whiteboard Victoria had dragged in. Silas's weakness is his ego, Caleb explained, uncapping a marker. He leverages everything. He borrows money to buy companies, uses the company's assets to pay off the loan, and pockets the difference. It's a house of cards. So how do we topple it? Victoria asked. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by financial reports, barefoot and focused. We don't attack him directly. We attack his supply line, Caleb said. He's funding the Kensington takeover through a bridge loan from Pacifico Bank. If we can prove that his collateral, the drone patents he doesn't have yet, is risky, the bank pulls the loan. But the patents are valuable, Victoria argued. Not, Caleb grinned, if we license them out exclusively to a non-profit for 10 years, triggering a poison pill clause in your corporate charter. Victoria stared at him. We don't have a poison pill clause. We do if we find the original incorporation documents from 1985, Caleb said, tapping his temple. Your father was paranoid about corporate raiders. He wrote a legacy protection bylaw. It's never been used, but it's still valid. It says the CEO can unilaterally lock IP assets if the company is under duress. How do you know that? Victoria asked, amazed. I've read those bylaws 100 times. You read the digital copies, Caleb said. I read the originals. They're stored in the archive room in the basement, next to the mop sink. I was bored one night. Victoria laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in months. "You are incredible." For a moment their eyes locked. There was a charge there, a connection born of shared danger and intellectual respect. Caleb looked away first, clearing his throat. "Focus," he said. "We need to draft the filing by Monday morning, but we can't let Silas know. He has eyes everywhere." "So what's the plan?" "I go back to work," Caleb said. "I mop the floors. I look like a defeated man who got his job back out of pity. Meanwhile, you play the scared socialite. You schedule a meeting with Silas for Monday noon to surrender. While he's gloating, I'll slip the filing into the outgoing mail for the SEC. By the time he signs the papers, the assets will be locked." It was risky. It was insane. It was brilliant. Sunday night, Caleb was leaving. Lily was asleep on his shoulder. "Caleb," Victoria said at the door. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he said grimly. "Silas is a viper. If he senses a trap, he strikes." "Why did you really agree to help?" she asked softly. "You could have walked away." Caleb adjusted the sleeping child in his arms. He looked at Victoria, his guard down for just a second. "Because you looked at me, not at the uniform. You looked at me. No one has done that in a long time." He walked out into the night. Victoria watched him go, her heart beating a rhythm she didn't quite recognize. Monday morning. The atmosphere at Kensington Global was toxic. The news of the failed merger had leaked. The stock was tanking. Employees were whispering in the hallways, terrified of layoffs. Caleb was back in his grey jumpsuit, pushing his cart through the lobby. People ignored him, stepping around him like he was an obstacle. He kept his head down, but his eyes were sharp. He checked the trash cans near the elevators. He checked the potted plants. He was looking for bugs. He made his way to the mail room. In his pocket was the envelope containing the legacy protection filing. He just needed to drop it in the priority bin before the 10 a.m. pickup. "Hey, floor boy!" Caleb froze. It was the head of security, a man named Miller who was on Silas's payroll. Caleb knew it. "Yeah," Caleb said, affecting a dull, slow voice. "Miss Kensington wants the executive washroom scrubbed. Now. Before her meeting." Miller sneered. "Sure thing, boss." Caleb turned the cart. He had to pass the mail room to get to the elevator. He could drop the letter. Just as he reached the slot, his phone buzzed. A jarring, shrill ring. He pulled it out. Unknown number. "Hello." "Hello, Caleb. Or should I say, Mr. Sterling." The voice was unmistakable. Smooth. Cold. Silas Mercer. Caleb's blood ran cold. He stopped his hand inches from the mail slot. "What do you want, Silas?" "I want you to take that envelope out of your hand," Silas said pleasantly, "the one addressed to the SEC, and I want you to shred it." Caleb looked around. He spotted a camera in the corner of the ceiling. Silas was watching. "I don't know what you're talking about," Caleb said. "I'm just a janitor." "Cut the act," Silas snapped. "You think I didn't recognize my old friend?" "You're clever, Caleb. The legacy protection clause. Very niche. Very you." "It's over, Silas," Caleb said, his voice low. "The filing goes in. The assets freeze. You lose." "Do I?" Silas chuckled. "Tell me, Caleb, how is Lily's glucose monitoring going?" "She's at St. Jude's Elementary, isn't she? Room 3B. The world stopped. The noise of the bustling office faded into a high-pitched ring in Caleb's ears. "If you touch her—" "Oh, I won't touch her," Silas said. "But I did make a call to Child Protective Services, An anonymous tip about a single father living in a squalid basement apartment, unstable income, history of mental breaks. I believe the police are on their way to the school, right now, to take her into protective custody. No. Caleb gasped. He dropped the mop handle. It clattered loudly on the marble. You have a choice, Silas whispered. Shred the letter. Walk out of the building. Never come back. If you do that, I call off the dogs. Lily stays with you. If you drop that letter, she goes into the system. And with your record, you'll never see her again. Caleb stood there paralyzed. The envelope felt heavy in his hand. It was the salvation of the company. It was Victoria's life. But Lily, his sweet, sick Lily, the only thing in the universe that mattered. 5 seconds, Caleb, Silas said. Caleb looked at the mail slot. He looked at the camera. I'm sorry, Victoria, he whispered. He turned to the shredder sitting on the mailroom counter. He fed the envelope into the teeth. The machine roared, chewing up the legal filing, chewing up Kensington Global's future. Good boy, Silas said. Now get out. The line went dead. Caleb ran. He didn't go to Victoria. He didn't go to the basement. He burst out of the service entrance and sprinted toward the subway. His heart screaming only one name, Lily. Victoria sat in her office, checking her watch, 10:15 a.m. The mail had gone. The filing should be on its way. Miss Kensington. Her secretary, trembling, opened the door. Mr. Mercer is here. Victoria stood up, smoothing her skirt. Send him in. She was ready. She would play the part. She would surrender, knowing that in 24 hours, the legal landmine Caleb planted would blow up in Silas's face. Silas walked in. He looked triumphant. He looked like a god of war. Victoria. He smiled, ready to sign the real surrender. He tossed a new contract on the table. It was worse than the first one. It was total capitulation. I suppose I have no choice, Victoria said, keeping her voice trembling. But I have conditions. You have nothing, Silas laughed. And neither does your janitor friend. Victoria froze. What? Caleb, Silas smirked. He's gone. Ran out of the building 10 minutes ago. Shredded your little legacy protection filing before he left. Smart man. He chose his daughter over your company. Victoria felt the room spin. You're lying. Am I? Silas pulled out his phone and played a video. It was security footage from the mailroom. It showed Caleb phone to his ear, feeding the envelope into the shredder. Victoria stared at the screen. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. He had shredded it. He had abandoned her. Why? She whispered. Because I know where to apply pressure, Silas said, pouring himself a drink from her decanter. Everyone has a breaking point. Now sign the papers, Victoria, or I liquidate the pension fund first. Victoria sank into her chair. She was alone, truly alone. The one person she thought understood her, the one person who could match her. He was just a hired hand after all. She reached for the pen. Meanwhile, across town, Caleb burst into the administrative office of St. Jude's Elementary. Where is she? He shouted, startling the receptionist. Lily Hawthorne. Sir, please calm down, the receptionist said. The police are with the principal. Caleb kicked the door to the principal's office open. 2 police officers and a woman in a beige suit, a CPS social worker, were standing there. Lily was sitting on a chair, crying, clutching her backpack. Daddy, she screamed, jumping off the chair. Caleb fell to his knees, catching her as she collided with his chest. He buried his face in her hair, sobbing. I've got you. I've got you. Mr. Hawthorne, the social worker said sternly, we received a report of neglect and hazardous living conditions. We need to take custody of the child pending an investigation. Over my dead body, Caleb snarled, looking up. The ferocious lawyer was back, but this time it was primal. You have no warrant. You have no evidence. This is a malicious report filed by Silas Mercer to blackmail me. If you touch her, I will sue this department, the city, and you personally for deprivation of civil rights under Section 1983. I will bury you in litigation so deep you will need a submarine to find sunlight. The social worker blinked. She had expected a confusing janitor. She was facing a legal buzzsaw. We have to follow protocol, she stammered. Protocol requires immediate danger, Caleb barked. Look at her. Is she malnourished? No. Is she abused? No. She has a continuous glucose monitor on her arm that costs $300 a month. Does that look like neglect? He stood up, holding Lily tight. I am walking out of here with my daughter. If you want to stop me, arrest me. But you better read me my rights perfectly, because I will memorize every syllable. The police officers looked at each other. They looked at the determined father and the terrified girl. They stepped aside. Caleb walked out, carrying Lily. He walked straight to his beat-up Honda Civic. He buckled her in. His hands were shaking. He had saved her. But he had lost everything else. He had betrayed Victoria. He drove to a park near the river. He bought Lily an ice cream. He watched her play on the swings, his heart heavy with shame. He checked his phone. No messages from Victoria. She probably hated him. She had probably signed the deal. It's over, he told himself. We survive. That's what we do. We survive. But as he watched Lily laugh, he remembered what he had told Victoria. Because you looked at me, not the uniform. He remembered the fire in Victoria's eyes. She was fighting for her father's legacy, just as he was fighting for his daughter. Daddy. Lily ran back to him, ice cream on her chin. Why are you sad? I let a friend down, baby. To save us. Lily frowned. But you tell me we have to be brave. Like Captain America. Caleb looked at his daughter. The wisdom of children. Yeah, Caleb whispered. We have to be brave. He looked at the time. 11:30 a.m. The meeting with Silas was probably still happening. Silas liked to gloat. He would drag it out. Caleb didn't have the filing. He didn't have the law on his side anymore. Silas had checkmated him. Or had he? Caleb's mind. The mind of the phantom began to whir. He replayed the conversation with Silas. I borrowed money from Pacifico Bank. Collateral. Wait. Caleb sat up straight. Pacifico Bank. Pacifico was a conservative bank, very risk-averse. They had a clause in all their bridge loans, the reputational risk clause. If the borrower was involved in active criminal investigation, the loan could be recalled immediately. Caleb didn't need to freeze the assets. He just needed Silas to be under investigation. But Silas paid off the police. He paid off the DA. He was untouchable. Except Caleb remembered something from his days as a janitor. A month ago, late at night, he was emptying the shredder bins in the server room. He had found a hard drive in the trash. It was cracked, thrown away by the IT director, who was also on Silas's payroll. Caleb had kept it thinking he might salvage parts for Lily's tablet. He hadn't looked at it. But if the IT director was wiping servers for Silas, "Lily," Caleb said, standing up. "Get in the car." "Where are we going?" "To the office," Caleb said, his eyes turning to cold steel. "Daddy has to take out the trash one last time." The service elevator groaned as it descended. Caleb stood in the corner, his arm wrapped protectively around Lily. He had parked the Honda in the loading bay, a place where security cameras had blind spots, a trick he learned during his first week of taking out the recycling. "Daddy, are we playing spies?" Lily whispered, looking up at him. Her eyes were red from crying, but she trusted him implicitly. Caleb crouched down, brushing a stray hair from her forehead. "Yes, baby, we're playing spies. But this is the most important mission. I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" Lily nodded solemnly. The elevator opened into the basement. The air was thick and humid. Caleb led her to the custodial break room. It was empty. He pulled a chair over to the corner away from the door. "I need you to sit here and play your game." He handed her his phone a risk, but he needed her distracted. "Do not open the door for anyone except me or the nice Lady Victoria. Understand?" "Yes, Daddy." Caleb kissed her forehead, locked the door from the outside, using his master key, and sprinted down the hallway. He didn't go to the elevators. He went to the server room. As the janitor, Caleb had access to every room in the building. Not digital access, but physical. He had the keys to the door, so he could empty the shredder bins. He swiped his keycard. The light turned green. He slipped inside. The room was a freezing forest of black towers blinking with blue and green LEDs. The hum of the cooling fans was deafening. Caleb moved to the workstation in the back, the crash cart used by IT for on-site diagnostics. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the hard drive he had salvaged weeks ago. It was an SSD from the finance director's laptop. He had seen the director throw it in the physical destruction bin, but the bin had been full, so it had just sat on top. Caleb had grabbed it, thinking he could wipe it and put games on it for Lily. He never got around to formatting it. He prayed the data was still there. He plugged it into the dock. The screen flickered. Drive F detected. BitLocker encrypted. "Damn it!" Caleb hissed. He needed a password. He closed his eyes, thinking like a social engineer. The finance director, a man named Marcus Thorne, was a creature of habit. He was arrogant. He wouldn't use a complex string. He would use something personal, something he was proud of. Caleb typed Porsche 911. Access denied. He typed Thorne Capital. Access denied. Caleb looked around the desk. He saw a sticky note under the monitor half peeled. It had a date on it. November 12th, 2022. The date Silas Mercer first approached the company. He typed merger 2026. Access denied. Time was running out. Upstairs, Victoria was probably signing the death certificate of the company. Then Caleb remembered something. He emptied the trash in Thorne's office every night. For the past month, Thorne had been obsessed with booking a vacation. He had brochures everywhere, not just any vacation. A specific yacht charter in the Maldives. The name of the yacht was on every brochure. Caleb typed Lady Vengeance. Access granted. Folders populated the screen. Caleb didn't waste time. He went straight to /user/documents/Mercer_project/off_books. He opened the first Excel spreadsheet. His eyes widened. It wasn't just market manipulation. It was fraud on a massive scale. Silas Mercer wasn't using his own money for the buyout. He was using a check-kiting scheme involving 3 offshore shell companies effectively using Kensington's own future assets to secure the loan that would buy them. It was illegal. It was a house of cards. But more importantly, there was an email chain with the chief risk officer of Pacifico Bank. Silas, the collateral, is thin. If the SEC catches wind of the inventory, inflation, we pull the line of credit immediately. Don't make us regret this. Caleb smiled, a feral, dangerous smile. He didn't print it. He didn't email it to Victoria. He opened an email client and drafted a new message. To compliance@pacificobank.com. Subject: urgent material. Breach of Coventy. Mercer/Kensington Loan Facility. He attached the spreadsheet and the internal emails. He hit send. Then he grabbed the hard drive and ran. Upstairs, the boardroom was silent. The only sound was the scratching of Victoria's pen. She had signed the first 2 pages. She was on the final page. Silas watched her, like a wolf watching a wounded deer bleed out. That's it, Victoria. Don't fight it. You'll be wealthy. You can retire to the Hamptons. Let the big boys handle the business. Victoria's hand stopped. She looked up at him, her eyes dull. You promised you wouldn't touch the pension fund. I promised I would try. Silas corrected, his grin widening. But markets are volatile. Victoria looked at the signature line. She felt sick. She felt like a traitor. Slam. The doors didn't just open. They flew open. Caleb stood there. Sweat was dripping down his face. His grey jumpsuit was stained with grease from the elevator shaft. He looked deranged. Don't sign it, Caleb roared, his voice hoarse. Security, Silas screamed, standing up. I told you to arrest him if he came back. 2 guards stepped forward, batons drawn. If you touch me, Caleb said, holding up the hard drive like a holy relic, you go down with him. This is a RICO predicate offense. Do you want to be accomplices to federal bank fraud? Because the FBI is going to be looking for people to blame. The guards hesitated. They looked at the hard drive, then at Silas. He's bluffing, Silas yelled. He's a janitor. He has nothing. Caleb walked past the guards. He didn't look at them. He looked only at Silas. He walked up to the glass table and placed the hard drive in the center. Then he pulled out his phone. He dialed a number on speaker. Who are you calling? Victoria asked, breathless hope sparking in her chest. Pacifico Bank, Caleb said. Direct line to the VP of Risk Management. We used to play golf together before my sabbatical. The phone rang once, twice. This is Henderson. Henderson, Caleb said, his voice dropping into the smooth, commanding baritone of Caleb Sterling. It's Caleb. Check your inbox. There was a pause on the line, a silence that stretched for 10 agonizing seconds. Silas looked from the phone to Caleb, his face twitching. Caleb Sterling. Henderson's voice came back, sounding shocked. My God, I thought. Wait. I'm opening the attachment. Silas lunged for the phone. Hang up. This is a violation of privacy. Caleb caught Silas's wrist. He didn't just catch it. He twisted it, forcing the older man back into his chair with a grunt of pain. Sit down, Silas. The adults are talking. Jesus Christ. Henderson's voice came through the speaker clearly. Is this real? The inventory logs, the shell company transfers. It's all there, Jim, Caleb said. Timestamps, IP addresses. Silas is buying Kensington with counterfeit collateral. If you fund this deal, Pacifico loses $4 billion by Tuesday. Kill the deal, Henderson was heard shouting to someone in the background. Kill the wire, notify the SEC, and freeze Mercer's liquidity accounts immediately." Silas's face turned the color of ash. He slumped in his chair. "Caleb," Henderson said, "if this is accurate, you just saved my career. But how did you—" "I'm just the janitor, Jim," Caleb said softly. "I'll be in touch." He hung up. The room was silent. Absolutely silent. Victoria looked at the contract in front of her. She picked it up. She looked at Silas, who was staring at the table, his empire crumbling in real time. "I believe," Victoria said, her voice shaking with adrenaline, "that the deal is off." She ripped the contract in half, then in quarters. She threw the pieces in Silas's face. "Get out of my building," she whispered. Silas stood up. He looked old. He looked defeated. He looked at Caleb with pure hatred. "You haven't won sterling. I'll bury you. I'll find something." "You'll be busy," Caleb said, crossing his arms. "The SEC takes a long time to depose witnesses, and I imagine your investors will want a word before then." Silas adjusted his suit jacket, tried to muster some dignity, and failed. He walked out of the room, the guards following him not to protect him, but to escort him out. Victoria stood alone with Caleb. She walked around the table. She didn't care about the board members watching. She didn't care about the open door. She stopped inches from him. She could smell the sweat and the dust of the basement on him. It was the best thing she had ever smelled. "You came back," she said. "I forgot my mop," Caleb joked weakly. Victoria didn't laugh. She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. She held him tight, shaking. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you." Caleb hesitated, then wrapped his arms around her. For the first time in 5 years, he didn't feel like a ghost. He felt real. "I didn't do it for the company," he whispered into her hair. "I know," she said, pulling back to look at him. "Where is she? Where is Lily? The basement?" Caleb grinned. "She's guarding the fort." Victoria took his hand. "Let's go get her. I think the new general counsel of Kensington Global deserves a better office than the basement." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "General counsel, I'm pretty expensive, Ms. Kensington." Victoria smiled, and it was radiant. "I think we can afford you." 3 months later. The view from the 42nd floor was different when you weren't cleaning the windows. Caleb stood in his office, the one that used to belong to Silas's mole, Arthur Pemsley. He was wearing a suit, navy blue, tailored sharp. It felt like armor he hadn't worn in a lifetime. On his desk there was a framed photo of Lily. She was smiling, holding a trophy from her science fair. Next to the photo was a small plastic toy, a mop bucket, a gag gift from Victoria. There was a knock on the door. "Busy." Victoria leaned against the doorframe. She looked relaxed, happier. The company stock was up 40% since the news broke of the fraud prevention. The market loved a redemption story. "Just reviewing the acquisition of Mercer Holdings," Caleb said, smirking. "The bankruptcy court accepted our bid. We're buying Silas's company for pennies on the dollar." "Poetic justice," Victoria said, walking over to him. "How is Lily?" "She loves the new school," Caleb said. "And the glucose monitor you got her, the one that syncs to my watch. It's a game changer. I slept through the night for the first time in years." Victoria adjusted his tie. "And how is her father?" Caleb looked at her. He looked at the city below. He thought about the cold nights, the hunger, the shame of the grey jumpsuit. He thought about the fear of losing everything. "He's good," Caleb said softly. "He's finally good." "Good," Victoria said. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was soft lingering, a promise of a future that wasn't written in legal contracts. "By the way," she whispered, pulling back, "the janitorial staff is complaining." "Oh," Caleb frowned. "Why?" "They say the new CEO spends too much time in the general counsel's office," she teased. "And they miss the guy who used to fix the coffee machine. Apparently the new guy just kicks it." Caleb laughed. He grabbed his briefcase. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home. I promised Lily pizza." "I'm driving," Victoria said. "Not a chance," Caleb replied, opening the door for her. "I know a shortcut." As they walked down the hallway, hand in hand, the office lights hummed. But this time, to Caleb Hawthorne, it didn't sound like a headache. It sounded like a symphony. The janitor had left the building. The father, the partner, the man had finally arrived. And that is the incredible story of Caleb Hawthorne, the single dad who went from scrubbing floors to saving $1 billion empire. It just goes to show that you never truly know who you're walking past in the hallway. That quiet janitor, that tired waitress, that guy on the bus. They might just be the smartest person in the room, waiting for their moment to strike. Silas Mercer learned the hard way that when you push a man who has nothing left to lose, you better be ready for a fight. What did you think of Caleb's revenge? Would you have shredded the letter to save your child, or tried to find another way like he did? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and subscribe for more twisting tales of real-life drama. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.